leader, and motivator, Mr. Mac Anderson.
There's a lot of talent in this room. But occasionally, we all have to step up to the mirror and ask ourselves that all-important question. And that is, are you doing all you can do to become all you can be? You know, there's that law of science that we saw earlier on the video. At 211 degrees, water is hot. Very hot. But at 212, it boils and turns to steam. And steam can power a locomotive. I mean, think about it. How many great bosses have you had, great ones, that didn't do their jobs and then some? How many great employees have you had that didn't do their jobs and then some? Let's take it one step further. How many great athletes, great coaches, great teachers, even great parents have you known that didn't embrace the 212 philosophy? I mean, they may not have known it, but they did. And once you hear this simple, uncomplicated analogy for excellence, I guarantee you it will be hard to forget. Barbara Glanz is a friend of mine. She's a speaker and an author. And a couple of years ago, she spoke to a large grocery store chain, over 3,000 people in the audience, and her speech was on service, giving the customer more than they expected, creating memories to make them want to come back. At the end, she left her contact information on the screen and said, you know, if you have any great customer service stories that you want to share with me, I'd love to hear from you. About a month later, she gets a call. And there was a young man on the other end who said, Barbara, my name is Johnny. I'm a bagger at the grocery store, and I have Down syndrome. And I loved what you had to say about service. But I thought, I mean, well, what can I do? I'm just a bagger. And then I had an idea. I love sayings, Barbara, and what I thought I would do each day is pick out my favorite saying, go home at night. My dad and I could print it out on the computer, and I'd cut out all the strips. I'd sign the back of each one, and the next day, when they were coming through the line, I'd drop it right in the bag, and I would say, I hope you enjoy my quote of the day. I mean, what do you think, Barbara? Barbara said, Johnny, I mean, that's a great idea. It's a wonderful idea. So about a month later, Barbara gets another call. And this time, it's from the store manager. She said, Barbara, you're not going to believe what's happened at our store. I came out the other day, one line was 3 times longer than the others. I went to the back of the line, tried to get them to move through another checkout. They wouldn't budge. I mean, they all wanted to see Johnny's quote of the day. In fact, one lady said, you know, I used to come here once a week. Now I come 2 and 3 times just to see the smile on his face when he drops in his favorite quote. The manager said the next day I rounded up my team. I shared with him what Johnny was doing to create memories in the store. And all of a sudden, the lady in the floral department, when she saw a broken flower, would cut it off and go out and find an elderly lady and pin on her corsage. The guy in the meat department loved Snoopy and bring his favorite Snoopy stickers and put them on the package and go out and laugh at the customer. He said, Barbara, everyone in the store has found a way to put their mark on service. So we're having the time of our lives. Everybody in this small town is talking about us. And you know what? It all happened for one reason. Johnny decided to do something. You know, we all have our special talents and our special ways we can serve the customer and serve your patients. But I gotta tell you, you'll never make that emotional connection unless it starts in the heart. But when you change, you will occasionally fail. Not if, but when. And when you fail, just remember this: fail forward. You know, it's blazed on my brain for forever. I simply refer to it as the fall of '94. In the early 90s, Accessories was on a roll. We'd gone from 5 million to 45 million in 3 years. And then came '94. I mean, Murphy's Law hit us like a ton of bricks. The first thing that happened is our CFO, Jim Allison, was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And Jim was 47 years old. And I was devastated for Jim and his family. And at the time, Jim and his department were working on a software project that would connect accounting to fulfillment. And because of his illness, it got delayed. It was critical for our holiday success. It had to be finished by September the 1st. It had to be. September the 1st, they came to me and said, "Mac, it'll be done next week." Next week. Next week. I heard next week for 2 months. It finally got done November the 1st, but it was too late. We had stores sitting empty in malls. We had thousands of direct mail customers that we couldn't serve. Got to tell you, for a guy that was in the attitude business, mine was pretty lousy for a couple of weeks. But help came from a board member. Mike Singletary, come on our board the year before. Some of you might know Mike is a Hall of Fame linebacker for the Chicago Bears. Mike knew I was down in the dumps. He comes in and says, "Mac, we can get through this. This is a bump in the road." He said, "You're the same guy that took us from 5 to 45. You're the same guy that's helped to create hundreds of products that have inspired millions of people." And he said, "I guarantee you one thing. It didn't happen by accident." As Mike finished speaking, I could feel the goosebumps. The courage, the belief began to return. And when he left, I took stock of Mac Anderson. And I came to realize that my skills were people skills and creative skills. My weaknesses, on the other hand, were in the operations and accounting side. And to rebuild our infrastructure, to grow the business again, we had to find great people to fill those voids, people who had been there, who had done that. You know, I had failed miserably. But from that failure, I learned some of the most important lessons of my life. I think probably one of my all-time favorite quotes is Henry Ford, when he said, "Failure is only the opportunity to begin again more intelligently." We need to learn to laugh more. Mayo Clinic did a study a few years ago. They said there are 3 main reasons people can't cope in life. 1 is low self-esteem. 2, they live in the past. And 3, they can't laugh at themselves. And in that same study, they said we need 12 laughs a day, just to stay healthy. A friend of mine was going through the airport a few years ago, going through customs, and he looks up, and there's a father and a young son in front of him. And the custom agent was grilling the father pretty good. Anything to declare? Nope. Cigarettes? Nope. Booze? Nope. Jewelry? Nope. And about that time, his little son reaches up and pulls on his coattail and says, "Yeah, but he's getting warmer, right, Daddy?" Oh, my goodness. Kids say crazy things. They laugh a lot. And then we grow up. And we become a heart attack waiting to happen. Southwest Airlines does a wonderful job, I think, laughing with their team, laughing with their customers, and laughing at themselves. I was on a flight not long ago. The flight attendant comes over to the PA. She said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to announce we've got a 99-year-old gentleman on board today. He's celebrating his birthday, and this is the first time he's ever flown." So you can imagine the whole cabin breaks out in light applause. She said, "On the way out, stop by the cockpit and wish him happy birthday." It was one of those times that I had a lot to do and very little time to do it. I panicked. I was overwhelmed. I'm sure no one here's ever felt that way. But I was sitting in my room feeling sorry for myself. My suite mate comes over and said, Mac, let me just share something my grandmother told me a few years ago. I said, what's that? He said, she told me inch by inch, life's a cinch. And yard by yard, life is hard. I said, Bob, I mean, here I am drowning in work, and your lifeline's a quote from your grandmother? I said, come on. But when he left, those 12 little words kept dancing in my head. I took out a sheet of paper and wrote down all the things I had to do in the next 3 days. And that night, I stayed up late and started knocking them off one by one. 3 days later, I took out the sheet, marked through the last thing on it. And you know what? It felt great. Then I took out another sheet of paper. I tore off the corner. And on that one, I wrote the words, inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, life is hard. I folded it up and I put it in my wallet. A lot of you know. Been collecting quotations ever since. You know, success doesn't come cascading like Niagara Falls. It comes one drop at a time through short-term, realistic goals. When I speak, a lot of people ask, you know, Mac, how did you start Successories? I mean, that's such a simple idea. I mean, what'd you do? Just wake up one night and nudge your wife and say, sweetheart, I think we can make a living selling motivational prints? It didn't quite work that way. It evolved inch by inch. Starting with this little book. It's a little book called Motivational Quotes. There are 80 pages in the book, and there's just a single quote on each page. And when I sold McCord Travel in the mid-'80s, we kept a small recognition award division of McCord. Ford Motor was one of our clients. And we were supplying the awards at their banquet, and they came at the last minute and said, do you have anything motivational? That's our theme. You know, we'd like to leave something at each plate. And I said, well, I've collected what I think are motivational quotes over the years. We could put them in a little book, put your logo on it, and hopefully they'd like it. They said, let's do it. Well, the next day, I mean, the phone was ringing off the wall. Of the 2,000 dealers that were there, I bet 1,000 were calling asking for more copies of this little book. They wanted to give it to their salespeople, sometimes give it as gifts, customer gifts. And I said, wow. I mean, people like quotes just like I do. And the thought occurred to me, you know, wonder if I could actually sell this little book. So to find out, I took it out to 3 hotel gift shops and said, look, I'm going to give you these 12 books if you'll sell it on this little plastic easel for $6.95. Just sell them one at a time. I said, fine. Came back a week later. They were all gone. They said, most sold the first couple of days. And I said, wow, people really do like quotes. And then one hotel after the other began to put it by the register on the easel. Airport gift shops picked it up. And over the next 18 months, we sold 800,000 copies of this little book. And halfway through, I had another idea. I said, you know, I wonder if people would want to put quotes on the wall. So to find out, I put a picture of a brass plaque in the back of the book and an order form next to it. And I said, look, you can order your favorite quote in this book on a brass plaque for $19.95. Well, the orders continued to roll in, and they didn't order just one. Many times they ordered 25, 50, 100 to give us a gift, to reinforce what they believed. So Successories evolved from this little book to the brass plaque to what was our breakthrough idea of combining beautiful photography with words to reinforce corporate goals and personal goals. So never forget, success doesn't come cascading like Niagara Falls. It usually comes one drop at a time. If we make good habits, I'm here to tell you, good habits will make us. You know, I heard a story not long ago about a lady going through her desk drawers. And she looks down and she sees an old yellowed receipt. And she smiles. Because 20 years ago, she had taken a pair of shoes into the shoe shop and forgotten to pick them up. She shuts the drawer, then she thinks, well, maybe, just maybe they're still there. So the next day, she gets into her car, she drives down to the store, she's very embarrassed. She asks for the manager. She said, could you check to see if by chance they're still here? He said, okay. He comes back in about 2 minutes and she says, well, are they here? He said, oh yeah. They'll be ready on Friday. See, procrastination is not exactly one of the good habits I'm talking about. But the point is, habits, good or bad, are very difficult to break. This looks like an intelligent group. I'm going to give you a little test. I'd like for everyone in the audience, if you would, to cross your arms for me just like this. Okay, pass the first part. Now, everybody look down. How many have your right arm on top? I've got my right one on top. Would you raise your hand if you have your right one on top? You can look around. Okay, how many have your left arm on top? Would you raise your hand? It never, ever fails. It's always right at 50-50. Makes no difference whether you're right-handed or left-handed. When you crossed your arms for the first time, who knows, it could have been in your playpen. You've been doing it that way ever since. Now do me another favor. Cross your arms again. This time put the wrong one on top. It feels extremely weird. Now this gentleman on the end, what's your first name? I'm sorry? Ken. Ken, I'm not going to bring you on stage, so don't panic. If we were to tell Ken for the rest of his life, when you cross your arms, you got to put the wrong one on top, could he do it? Probably. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But he'd have to have Post-it notes on the mirror, the desk, the steering wheel, everywhere to remind him to put the wrong one on top. Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellent sin is not an act. It is a habit. Procrastination can be attitude's natural assassin. There's nothing so fatiguing as an uncompleted task. Now here's a tip I think will help you with your procrastination issues. I know it helped me when I first heard it. There's an old saying that says, if the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is eat a live frog, then nothing worse can happen for the rest of the day. I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty safe assumption. And Brian Tracy, in his book, Eat the Frog, said your frog should be the most difficult thing on your things to do list. The one you're most likely to procrastinate on. Because if you eat that first, it'll give you energy, momentum for the rest of the day. But if you don't, if you let him sit there on the plate and stare at you while you do 100 unimportant things, it can drain your energy and you won't even know it. So here's your assignment. For the next 30 days, take a look at your list. Circle the frog. Eat that first, and you will thank me for it. We need to manage our emotions. Your emotions are powerful motivators. Sometimes our greatest challenge is getting inside our own heads and understanding what makes us tick. And one of the things we need to do from time to time is unleash what I call your emotional energy. A legendary Alabama football coach, Bear Bryant, had a third stringer on his team named Henry Peterson. And Henry had never gotten to play. And just before the Alabama-Auburn game, Bear got a call from Henry. He said, Coach, my father died. I'm not going to be there on Saturday. And Bear said, no problem, son. You need to be with your family. And the next day, Bear got another call. Henry said, Coach, I got to thinking about it. I don't want to let the team down. I'm going to be there. So Saturday rolled around. Henry was dressed and ready to play, and just before the game, he comes up to Bear. He said, "Coach, I want you to start me today." And Bear said, "Son, are you nuts? Are you crazy? I mean, this is the Alabama-Auburn game. You've never played." But Henry persisted, and Bear, never knowing why, said, "Okay, I'll put you in on the first play." Henry Peterson ran for 3 touchdowns in the first half. He almost beat Auburn by himself. At halftime in the locker room, Bear comes over and says, "Son, I don't know whether to kiss you or to kill you. I mean, why haven't you shown me you could play football like this?" Henry said, "Coach, you ever see me walking around the campus with my dad?" He said, "Yeah, I think I have." He said, "Well, my dad was blind, and today was the first day he ever got to watch me play football." You see, people are like sticks of dynamite. The power's on the inside, but nothing happens until the fuse gets lit. I mean, what happens when you believe something with all your heart? What happens? Belief fuels enthusiasm. And Emerson said nothing great was ever accomplished without enthusiasm. And you know what? I couldn't agree more. In 1972, I was hired by Orville Kent Food Company. But there was a problem. I knew how to hire and train salespeople, but I knew nothing about the salad business. And that's what they sold, prepared salads to restaurants and to delicatessens. So I was assigned to Sid Caseman. Sid was 57 years old. He had worked and sold to delis all his life. And he loved what he did. I'd been there about a week. Sid comes into my office, big smile on his face. He said, "Mac, you're not going to believe it. I've been trying to get this appointment for 2 years. He said, "I finally got it. It's with the largest chain of delis in the state. Over 200 stores." He said, "It's on Friday. You want to go with me?" You bet I did. So Friday rolled around, went downstairs to get our refrigerated samples, got in the car, drove out to the corporate headquarters. The buyer comes out to greet us, takes us back to the office. He looks at Sid from across the desk. He said, "Sid, what makes you think your product is any better than the competition's?" Well, I mean, that was Sid's cue to perform. He starts talking about the potato salad, the #1 seller in the deli. Talks about how we cook the potatoes and they're always consistent. The fresh cut vegetables, the special dressing we use, our state-of-the-art plant. But then he stops. He says, "Bob, I saved the best for last. You're going to love how it tastes." And with that, he reaches down, he grabs the sample cup, and he pops open the lid. And I couldn't believe it. Sitting right on top was a huge black rotten potato about the size of a quarter. But Sid sees the potato before the buyer does. He reaches down, he grabs it, he pops it in his mouth. He says, "Bob, I just can't get enough of this stuff." And with that, the buyer reaches down, he grabs some salad, he eats it. He said, "You know, Sid, it does taste great." I mean, it was a magical moment. I had just witnessed a sophisticated buyer eating potato salad with his fingers, and he didn't even know it. And you know what? It was all for one reason: Sid's unbridled enthusiasm. When I was a senior in college, I got to hear Charlie Cullen speak for the first time. Charlie had talked to many Fortune 500 audiences. The year before, he was ranked by his peers as the #1 speaker in the country. But today, as a favor to his nephew, he was speaking to 20 college students at the Holiday Inn. And I sat there on the edge of my seat, just soaking in every word. He was talking about the keys to success. He talked about believing in yourself, humility, perseverance. But he ended with a story that I never forgot. He said he was in the airport at Oklahoma City, and he looked up and he saw 2 little girls. He said they were skipping, and they were singing. Daddy's coming home in a big jet. Daddy's coming home on a big jet. He said their eyes sparkled like diamonds. They were so excited. You could tell their mother was so proud of them as she kind of corralled them against the wall at the gate. And when the door opened, you didn't need to know which one their father was. Their eyes were glued on him. And as he walked out, he walked right by and he yelled at his wife, "Why in the heck didn't you bring my top coat?" And Charlie said, "You see, here's a guy that had the opportunity to be great. And he didn't even recognize it." I mean, how many times a day, a week, a month, a year do we have the opportunity to be great and not even know it? You know, there's one thing we can all do to make a difference, and it is one word: kindness. On March 5th, 2003, I turned on Good Morning America, and Charlie Gibson was interviewing General Earl Hailston. He was the U.S. General for the Marines, and they were stationed 3 miles off the border of Iraq, waiting to go to war. And Charlie, at the end of his interview, said, "General, do you have any hobbies, besides your profession?" He said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "I love photography, especially taking photos of my men." He said, "We've been here for 3 days waiting. During the day, I go out and I shoot photos of them, and at night I go back to my tent. I email those photos with a short note back to their moms in the States." And Charlie said, "Wow. Do you mind if you would share with me what you say?" He said, "No problem." He turned on his computer, and this is the last note he had sent. It said, "Dear Mrs. Johnson, I thought you might enjoy seeing this picture of your son. He's doing great. And I also wanted you to know you did a wonderful job of raising him. You must be very proud. I can certainly tell you I'm honored to serve with him in the U.S. Marines. General Earl Hailston." I got to tell you, I had goosebumps. And then I watched Charlie leave the general and go out and talk to some of the troops at random. And without exception, you could feel the love and respect that they had for their leader. You may have heard the quote, "They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." Well, here's someone that understood what caring kindness and 212 leadership was all about.